Hi, folks. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast. I've got Stuart Lockhead with me at the moment, and we're hoping Jimmy Hutton will join us later. The mobile studio needs its brake pads sorted, so he's away doing that. And there's a safety issue he cannot delay. Today, we have to talk about Brexit.
Oh no.
Ouija Doug has an interesting piece that I think will lead us in different directions. And Peter Morrell was a witness at the harassment inquiry. I think that might well lead us, well, it'll certainly lead me into the Wings Over Scotland piece today. Yeah.
Not sure what I can really say about that.
Well, I've got a bit to say about it.
Okay. As I say, and we probably need to just comment on Craig Murray, but we'll see.
Well, I'll come into the Brexit thing. I think we should start by saying there's just been some traffic on social media pertaining to come from Michael Gove. Apparently, there's been an agreement struck, not at the no deal level, below that, the withdrawal agreement level, I think, that has necessitated them taking the three clauses in the internal market bill that pertain to ignoring international treaties. Apparently, they're going to take those three clauses out.
Of course, so they're going to the sneaky card that they found under the table to put in their hand, just to wave and say, "Look, I've got a full house here." They've now admitted they're good, just so they've thrown it away again.
Well, I mean, I think most people, well, most informed people, I think, understood that it was a bargaining chip.
They just invented it to wave at across the channel. We are going to break rules. We're gangsters. We'll never agree to anything. And
well, I think what's most interesting is it didn't come out to get a deal. It seems that I don't have all the details of it, but it seems that unless it's coming out now, so they don't have to say they had to give it up to get a deal. Who knows?
But you're talking about what's called, in diplomatic terms, choreography.
Aye, well,
what it looks like.
It certainly looks like a lack of honesty. Whether that can be called choreography, I don't know.
That's what they call it.
Which sort of brings us to the Craig Murray piece today.
Oh, aye, Craig. Sometimes you wonder just where he's been, but today he's on the button, and some of the things he just points out they're just you can't ignore them. What is he saying here? Johnson will not disappear.
Well, the thrust of the article is the present sort of trope that Johnson will go before the next election.
Yeah, and the other thing is he points out that the racist brand is very, very strong in Britain. Johnson and Cummings plan to appropriate it and target the areas of England with the lowest level of education achievement as their new political base still holds up as a political strategy. Look at the polls. The Tories are still ahead of Labour. And that kind of sums up half the article.
There was a meme on, again, Twitter it was, that compared a leaflet from the BNP to the present Tory party stance.
It's worse than that. It was the National Front that goes so far back.
Was it the National Front?
It's so far back.
Well, it kind of shows how far to the right. Certainly the Tory party have moved, but possibly the population of England. Or maybe Britain.
It was 6 or 7 major policies.
Immigration.
Which back then.
Again.
Yeah. Who's got them there?
No, I've just off the top of my head.
But it's like these were policies that the National Front were regarded as a fascist party and were banned. And yet they are now policies being implemented by this Tory government. So what has happened in this country?
Well, and that, I think, was part of Craig Murray's piece as well. Was it Craig Murray that said it's actually happening? It's not down the road. It's not some future that we're looking towards. It's actually happening now.
One of his things he says is the Starmer project will falter on public reluctance to yet again choose between two Tory parties. I mean, that's another measure of how far to the right it's gone.
Well, I get his bit. I mean, the idea that Starmer was going to stick to the economic policies that Corbyn had, which was part of his stance for the last general election, was always a bit, I thought, far-fetched, but there you go. Certainly for the people in the Labour Party that I know, who tended to be New Labour, with the exception, honourable exception of Phil.
What does he say? He says here, Craig Murray said, it will be mortifying how readily the Tories will twist the narrative to blame the EU. This is even if it's a deal, but just to get whatever bad deal we get. And also to obtain English nationalist support for the notion that this gradual pain is worth it in pursuit of a purer country with less immigration. That may sound crazy to you, but is it not crazy to you that the Tories are still ahead in the polls?
I think a lot of what he says, and this, as I say, this announcement by Gove underlines his theory that we'll get a deal. And I think he's right. The pain will not hit us. Well, there'll be a certain amount of pain, I think, in January, but real pain will not hit us till further down the road, by which time the excuses will be lined up like ducks in a row.
I think Boiling the Frog, which I still remember Christopher Brookmyre, a wonderful novel by him. But Boiling the Frog has now become a strategy, a political strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And the other bit of news that popped up today on my social media feeds, apparently one of the big shipping companies is ignoring Felixstowe for the next 6 months because there's big blockages there, apparently. That's
the biggest?
Pre-Brexit. Well, apparently it's all going to Zeebrugge, where it will be broken down onto smaller boats.
Ah, well, they come direct
and sent to different ports.
They come into Grangemouth, the smaller ones.
Well, that's going to see a little bit. Well, it's going to see some disruption. It's obviously designed to get round the disruption that's happening at Felixstowe at the moment.
Yes, I don't know for sure if it was Craig Murray, but somebody else, I think possibly, was saying they're really not expecting anything desperately bad to happen on the 3rd of January. Because there has, but I mean, it's so much of what there is left in business with any kind of a positive attitude has planned ahead for at least.
Well, and the fact that there is going to be effectively token customs for things arriving in the country.
Yeah, they'll just sample.
The problem will be how strict the other side, the EU side of the customs, is going to be as to whether you get long lines of lorries in Kent.
I'm not sure that they can fall out with the UK on that issue, because it doesn't matter what side the hold-ups are. They affect the return. The lorries have to return again, don't they? 90% of the lorries are the same lorries going backwards and forwards all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as this is about deliveries and empty shelves, on the British side, if you're not checking what's on the lorries, if you're just letting them drive through with no customs checks, in other words, ignoring the border in that direction, that's designed to prevent holdups.
Oh, of course. Mind you, I'm pretty sure there have been some pretty large smuggling operations
Yeah.
already planned. I can imagine this is going to upset their asylum seekers. Stopping asylum seekers that are making it into the UK, isn't it? I mean, there's going to be huge opportunities for people smugglers.
It's interesting that the net effect for the first few months, 6 months maybe, will be to open the borders up even more. Still, there you go.
There's one lovely phrase that Craig Murray comes up with here. He says, a deal which is far harder than Brexit than anybody imagined when Theresa May set down her famous red lines will be greeted by a relieved business community as better than actually blowing your brains out.
Yeah, well, it's, shooting yourself in the foot. You get to survive it, but you're crippled. Which actually might be quite a good metaphor for Britain of the next 10 years. I suppose we'll have some sort of resolution by possibly Friday.
Of the current impasse, Brexit.
Well, yeah, but I've been reading quite a lot of European-produced articles, and it seems that the position in Europe is that they're all happy for Macron in France to be the bad guy, but they are all in agreement.
He'll take the hit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the French are very good at taking the hit from the UK, so it won't be any great loss to him.
No, you're right.
But I'd like to say I think there will be a deal, but it'll be thin gruel.
Today, the morning TV shows were all excited. They were all focused on the same thing, which was the start of the vaccination program. But we're not going to see very much in the way of an impact on our lives until about Easter, really, are we?
Wouldn't have thought so, no. It was interesting that the second person, the first man, they managed to find somebody called William Shakespeare.
Well, there you go.
I have grave doubts that was accidental, but yeah.
But I was thinking, by the time this vaccine has an impact, let's say at Easter times, we should also be starting to feel the impact of Brexit.
Yeah. I'm totally convinced that anything that goes wrong will be blamed either on the pandemic or on the EU.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. And with the supine media in this country will, of course, just confirm it, won't they?
Yeah, I think so. The other news on a lighter vein is apparently number 10 has not backed the Royals tour of the UK. They've basically said what Nicola Sturgeon said. They've said it's up to the palace.
So they must have noticed it wasn't getting a perfect media story across the country.
I mean, if you come to Scotland first and you know anything about the way the world works, you should shut up till they've been in England for a day before you make any pronouncements. I mean, the Scottish Tories are really good at coming out with a definite line only to have their legs cut off them by number 10 a couple of days later. And that applies to the unionists when it comes to the Royals.
I thought we briefly touched on Nicola Sturgeon's reaction yesterday at the press briefing yesterday, and she was diplomatic but firm, whereas the papers tried to twist it, and then the Tory MPs really did try to twist it. Full outrage. Oh, awful. Well, I'm sorry, but there's a majority in Scotland that are anti-royal.
Well, I look forward to 2 questions being asked of Mr. Dross, Douglas Ross, the leader of the Tory party in Scotland. One, are you now against the devolved settlement as you voted for the internal
market bill?
Market bill.
Was that last
Again,
night?
yeah.
We nearly forgot that.
All 6 Tories in Scotland. Sorry, all 6 Tory MPs in Scotland. There is more than 6 Tories in Scotland. Voted in favour of it. And I've forgotten. What was the second thing?
No,
what was the second thing?
I couldn't tell you. I can't help you here at the moment. But
what were we just talking about?
Oh, we're talking about the row of the Royal Train. The Royal Train and the shock horror of the Tories.
I can't remember.
The full anger. Else. Anyway, and oh yes, and also the internal market bill getting passed by the Tories last night.
Yes, well, that, and there was another
we nearly
thing.
Forgot all about it.
That was another thing that came up that was directly opposed to Douglas Ross's supposed stance. Wheesht Doug.
Yes, Paul
in
Kavanaugh,
the National.
The wee ginger Doug. Well, obviously we can't. We should point out again that he had a serious illness recently. I think it was a stroke. But over the last few months, he's been towing a fairly close line supporting the SNP government. He has been a little bit critical, but not seriously. But today, his position on his position on the changes at the top of the NEC is far from supporting the SNP HQ is my shorthand for what the top. You know, other people call it the hierarchy, but well, just SNP headquarters suits me. So he's been. What does he say? The recent elections to the SNP's NEC and the changing of the guard on the party's ruling body went some way to assuaging grassroots misgivings. Well, if you think about what I've just said, it doesn't make sense. The recent elections to the SNP's NEC, you would have assumed that was changing of the guard, but he puts in the word "and" the changing of the guard on the party's ruling body. I thought the NEC was the ruling body.
Well, it is.
I think it's just grammar then, is it?
I mean, that part of it remains to be seen. I mean, it's one thing to get your people on the NEC. It's another one for them to be effective.
That's very true.
Much more important is his point about the top-down reaction.
It's Wheesht for Indy again, but at this time he's telling the top HQ.
Yeah,
it's them that's got to be Wheesht for Indy.
It's them that has to shut up and allow the grassroots to get on with it to save it independence.
He accuses Alan Smith of putting the boot into an open wound.
Well, that's effectively what he did. I mean, it's Labour Party politics. That's my problem with it.
I want you to know if you can tell and answer this question. He says here, others prefer the more sleeked approach, giving off-the-record briefings to anti-independence journalists. Now, who the hell could he mean?
I don't know.
I wish he said.
I mean, I have my doubts that a lot of an SNP source told me material is what he's referring to, but I have my doubts that much of that is SNP insiders. I think a lot more of it is just a way for our press to get an idea out there without having to take responsibility for it.
Well, he also kind of sends a message back to the Wokarati. He says, all you're doing, you know, giving anonymous briefings to the British nationalist press and all this, the petulance from Alan Smith, etc., you're sending a signal to the wider movement that the priority is not independence.
Well,
That
I
you,
mean, that's why the NEC saw so many changes.
exactly.
I don't think he's saying anything we're not aware of.
Well,
But
sometimes we feel as though we're talking inside a bubble, but this he's opening it up a bit more, isn't he?
well, I think we are talking inside a bubble. I do, and I think that is one of the problems that the other side have. The piece in Wings today, where he basically calls for Nicola Sturgeon to resign, is madness on sticks politically, because most of the people in Scotland don't delve into the minutiae of it the way we do. Or I think Nicola would be less popular.
Look,
but while she's as popular as she is, why would you want her to resign?
I know, but the basis on which he makes that, mind you, he's built up his passion about the issue, hasn't he, for quite a while. But he claims that the evidence is there that she has lied and she has broken the ministerial code. And as such, she has no option but to resign.
Yeah, but he definitely ignores the actual wording, which is something like, I think, knowingly. So it's open for you to make a mistake, which is what she claims she did about her timing.
But then again, I'm going to quote you. I mean, as you said yourself before, only yesterday, I think, you hate Wings because he's bloody right too bloody often.
Well, he's not right about that.
Okay.
Because, as I say, he definitely ignores the get out of jail free card in the wording. Which brings us onto the Murrell appearance.
All right. I gave up after about 3/4 of an hour. Did you notice how much Linda Fabiani was defending him, protecting him from awkward questions?
This is I didn't catch the start of it. When I jumped in to what is supposed to be an inquiry into the civil service, Andy Whiteman, and who was it before him?
Oh, I missed that.
Bailey, Jackie Bailey.
Oh, Jackie Bailey. I pulled away after she started.
We're going through the details of the SNP structure for complaints.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, why is this line of questioning even being allowed? I mean, it's got nothing to do with the civil service complaints issues. It's about the SNP.
So, I mean, yeah, that's fair. But I'm surprised Linda Fabiani allowed that line of questioning to go on. What was noticeable was Margaret Mitchell, who's a Tory, and she's the deputy convener. She didn't ask anything controversial as far as I was concerned at the start. She didn't ask much at all. And the next 3 committee members to ask questions were all SNP. It was Alistair Allen, Maureen Watt, Angela Constance. And then, of course, we had Murdo Fraser, who wasn't very, he's not a lawyer. If he's a lawyer, he's a conveyancing lawyer. He certainly is not very, he's not what you call forensic. Alec Cole-Hamilton, he was told not to ask certain questions by Linda Fabiani. I don't recall Linda Fabiani being quite so defensive of a witness for quite before.
The whole aspect of this is it is not an inquiry into the civil service. It is not an inquiry into the harassment complaints procedure. It's an inquiry into the SNP stroke First Minister stroke her husband. That's what it's about. Cole-Hamilton and Bailey to an extent today, although I'll be fair to her, she's been by far the best inquisitor. Cole-Hamilton and the Tory, what's his name? You just mentioned him. Murdo Fraser. And frankly, if I was the chairman, they'd be getting slapped down every second question. I mean, they go on about the amount of information they've got, blah, blah, blah. Why why is the CEO of the SNP being called? He's being called because he's the husband of the First Minister. Because the only input he has in reality is to say, can you corroborate what your wife has told us?
Yeah, they were far from useful inquisitors. The pair of them, Murdo Fraser and Alex Cole-Hamilton, they didn't reveal very much at all this morning.
Well, it's a very, very wide-ranging. I would love to see Cole-Hamilton sitting there answering questions about the Liberal Democrats' complaint system. I'd love to see Fraser sitting there answering questions about the Tories' complaints. Oh, we got the witness into a hotel room and questioned them on their own without representation. You know, I mean, to me, I don't understand. You know, if they'd been told to ask questions about what the inquiry's about, it might have been a much more useful exercise. Having said that, Jackie Baillie did get one thing out in the open. The meeting with Alex Salmond at Sturgeon's house, Sturgeon said it was an SNP matter, and Murrell is claiming it was a government matter, and therefore she couldn't divulge what the meeting was about.
It's still a bit, it takes your breath away, the idea that a married couple like that, running the SNP between them and the government, wouldn't be sharing information. But they are not going to put each other into the dock, are they?
Well, let me put it this way. As a member of the Privy Council, which Nicola Sturgeon is, there are things she cannot tell anybody that isn't on the Privy Council. Do we believe she does that?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because there's an awful lot of them there. And I've never heard of anyone being thrown off at the Privy Council, have you?
I don't think so, no. But I mean, the question I'm asking, I don't know Nicola Sturgeon as an individual, so I don't know how seriously she takes that aspect of her job. But there are things she is by law not allowed to tell other people. So who knows?
Who knows? It's, you know, I when it comes to the inquiry, I shall wait a couple of days and 2 or 3 other people will publish their interpretations of what they saw, because I get bored.
Well, I've got a clip of Ms. Baillie. God forgive me, but here we go.
Okay. You didn't warn me. I could have left the room.
Well, this it just really underlines the point I just made.
Your evidence conflicted with hers. You said
I can't hear it.
that meeting as the first
Wait a minute.
and therefore you wouldn't.
I have to go back to the beginning. This is about the First Minister as evidence. Here it comes.
Your evidence conflicted with hers. You said that she had that meeting as the First Minister, and therefore you wouldn't know because it wasn't proper for you to know government business. I entirely accept that statement. The difficulty you have is Nicola Sturgeon has said, no, she wasn't the SNP leader. She said she was not the First Minister having that meeting, she was the SNP leader having that meeting. As the highest ranking official within the SNP, would you have expected to be told about it?
Well, I think again, it's set out there for you. I mean,
but it's set out in conflict.
If it was a matter that was, coming to the party as something that was about to happen, then yes, I would expect to be told, and that's what happens. I get told things when they're about to come my way, and that happens all the time. Similarly, when the news was breaking, it came to me very late. And that's just what happens. You get it's on a need to know basis.
Okay. The reason I'm exploring this is because there is a conflict, a direct conflict, in your statement compared to Nicola Sturgeon's. Okay? There's no dubiety about that. You have both written different things. Well, it's in black and white. But anyway,
I just don't accept that.
I'll not pursue the point further. It is in black and white, and the record will show that. Can I turn to these infamous text messages? Who are the text?
I have to say, yeah, I saw that piece, I must admit. And then,
Wait a minute.
you know, it was quite astute of Jackie Bailey, and he did look a bit, well,
There's another level of complexity to this. If it was a Scottish Government meeting, it should have been minuted. So there is trouble ahead round that alone.
and don't forget also that this isn't the only inquiry that's going on. There's a breaking the ministerial code is a different inquiry, and it's being done by an Irish gentleman, James Hamilton, I think. He's a senior lawyer from Ireland. So we await developments there as well. And I understand that his remit has been slightly broadened with the agreement of the First Minister.
Yeah, what now? What was it? What's been added to it? Can you remember?
God, no, I confess I forget the detail on that one.
Which brings me to the point that I was kind of wanting to make about the Wings article. Who does Stuart Campbell think is going to step into the First Minister's shoes, maintain the popularity that she has, and lead the party better?
Tricky. He hasn't nominated anybody, has he?
And that's just tear it down and see what comes out of the rubble. And I think it's a serious mistake. Politically, I mean.
Well, the question arises.
She's made mistakes on this one.
Yeah, the question still arises: if she is, will the First Minister make it all the way to this election without a major problem to her position coming from either of these inquiries, the ministerial one or the one we're watching at Holyrood?
This inquiry doesn't touch her officially, if you like. This is just muck spreading in the hope that some of it sticks and tarnishes her reputation.
So they don't, the people, well, the unionists on this committee don't really want any resolution at all. They want it to run right up to the, all the way up to the May election.
It's a political tool for them. It's not. So
does that mean that the danger is the ministerial code inquiry by James Hamilton? Is that the dangerous one?
That is the danger, because if that agrees with the unionist position that she lied to Parliament, it's in black and white. She should resign.
Well, if Stuart Campbell's right,
Stuart Campbell is what he's written today. I don't know why he ignored the word. I think it's knowingly. The inference being, if you stand up and lie to Parliament and you know you're lying, that's a resignation issue. If you stand up and make a statement to Parliament that turns out not to have been true, but it was made in good faith, there's wriggle room. So knowingly lying.
I wasn't struck by the piece that he published this morning, Stuart published this morning, as terribly, well, the word not devastating anyway. So, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, Norrie, because I didn't think it was as important.
Well, there is
wriggle room. He was shuffling FOIs, Freedom of Information requests and things, and it's possible you could be right. Your conclusion could be just as good as Stuart's for a change.
Well, I mean, as I said the other day, his work is rarely wrong. In fact, I can't think when one of his predictions, based on all the facts that he lays out, including sources, I can't remember him being wrong.
I suppose
that worries me when it comes to the First Minister's position.
You know, when he really started this campaign about the GRA identity, self-identity issue, transphobia, all this thing, you know, it was like people like you and me wanted to just stay away from it, Stuart, leave it alone. And yet look how it's turned out. It
became an issue of the NEC. Whether that's where it was intended or it was just a matter of principle for him, I don't know. But it certainly ended up highlighting a problem that at the time it all started, I wasn't aware of. So it's good work from that point of view.
It is. Well, fear not. Well, we've got the First Minister on her feet in about 7 minutes by my clock.
Yeah.
And it's going to be quite interesting. There was word that Edinburgh might be reduced to level 2. And if Jimmy gets his brake shoes sorted, he could be waving flags and driving down the road on Saturday night.
Well, there was indications Edinburgh might be moved to level 2.
That's what
the press indicated that Edinburgh might move to level 2.
We'll see.
Nobody in government has said that.
We'll see. Yes, yesterday's figures raw figures didn't indicate that.
Was there not quite a big jump?
No, it was just
the last figures, proper figures.
Lothian were back in as third. The problem Edinburgh's got is that West Lothian, in particular Livingston, is a hotbed of the virus. If you've done your homework like I have, and unfortunately, you know, Livingston is the biggest dormitory from Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Edinburgh's biggest dormitory is Livingston. It's a big place, but they're in and out of Edinburgh like all the time. So there you go.
Oh, well, we'll call it a day at that. Not a good day for the SNP, it must be said. But thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for being with me, Stuart.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Norrie.
And we'll catch up with you tomorrow, where there'll be a PMQs. Who knows, maybe a deal will be announced.
I don't think it'll be timed for the PMQs. It's bigger than that.
I don't think that'll matter. If it looks like there's going to be a deal, I expect him to announce something.
Do you think they'll turn up with Union Jack waistcoats, the Brexiteers, when they get a deal?
I think the Brexiteers will start sliding back under their rocks very shortly, unless they come up with a blame narrative that diverts all the blame from them. I think they'll be seldom seen.
Well, I don't agree. I think they've on their high horses now, and they think they can do anything. Like gangsters. Once you get away with it once, you think you can get away with it again and again and again.
Well, we'll see. Okay, folks. See you tomorrow. Thanks for listening today. Cheers for now.